I've been nominated a few times. Won once. Yeah. You work all these years to, from kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade. And you're like, man, I can't wait till I'm an adult. And you get there, and it's a joyous moment, but it's also a solemn moment because you're like, damn, what next? Now I got to go to college. You know what I'm saying? And then from there, it's like, what's next? Now I got to get a job. And then from there, it's like, what's next? Now I got to have a family, whatever the case may be, whatever your trajectory is. So it's, having been doing it since I was 17, 16 professionally, I'm 31 now, you kind of just go with the flow. You never get too high, you never get too low. I think that's how I've been able to keep doing it for so long without jumping off the deep end, because there's moments where, you'll gain so much, but you'll lose so much, and you got to just know how to keep moving and keep it G. Being around the greats, like my mentors, Babyface and Antonio Dixon and, Oak, and, there's a lot of these guys who are obviously major producers and writers and have been doing it for such a long time. I mean, Face has been doing it, 40 years, man. I mean, that's a long, long time. And just seeing how much of the accolades they got, but they still wake up with a hunger for more. I mean, I was at Face's studio the other day, and it's like, just, 14 Grammys just like out on this table. And it's like, man, like I ain't done shit. People look at me like, oh man, you done this and you done that. But there's always more, you know what I'm saying? It's almost like Kobe. I don't know if there's a famous quote when he's like in the playoffs and they're like, oh man, you guys finishing XYZ. And he's like, yeah, but the job's not done. I think for me, being around these guys that were such powerhouse producers and such, just so focused on the art form rather than winning and getting the accolades, and saw how they were really just humble. Like Antonio and Kenny and all those guys are so humble, and they don't, I mean, when it's time to flex, they'll flex, but you just don't feel, you don't feel the arrogance, or you don't feel the air of like success around them. Until you start working, and then you're like, oh, these motherfuckers are like the real deal. Same thing with like one of my really good friends, Boy Wonder. Like this guy's one of the biggest producers of our generation, and it's just a humbleness. I think that kind of just preserves your creativity and preserves your relationships for you to be able to have a long lasting one. When I was in high school, I got introduced to a guy who's still one of my good friends to this day, named Alvin, and we started a production company. We went through a journey, man. We didn't know what we were doing or how we were going to do it. He was actually more well versed in that world than I was. He had done beat battles and all these other things, but we had ended up finding a synergy and just put together, work with local artists and just kind of put together just like a little crew. And we were recording in my mom's back house, and we were just having just kids creating, man. And then one opportunity led to another, and we ended up getting attention of Antonio Dixon, who was a partner of Babyface, and from there Face came in and kind of just was like, hey, what do you guys want to do? I met a guy named Leon Thomas, who is a great guy, great musician. We ended up forming a production company, and we went on to do, a lot of great things. We work with Ariana and, Chris Brown and Drake and this one and that one. And we were able to really kind of just solidify ourselves as producers and grow. And, and then from there, still producing now, but, going into my executive route, following in the footsteps of my mentors and people that I've seen, watched and do this. And I went to law school, got my JD, so prepped myself, from the legal side of things, and, just finding my footing, man, and just really trying to give opportunity to young artists and develop talent and tell these stories, man, because there's a lot of stories out here that are unique and that need to be heard and that, are going to change the world. And I'd love just to be a little stroke of the paint, and that changes that. And it's crazy because at different phases of your life, there's different mentors, there's different people, and they all kind of collectively kind of combine into being, shaping who you are today. But even to this day, like, I mean, in this present day, like, David Massey, who, in a way is kind of like the nucleus and the generator of my executive career, because he took a kid who had ambition and had the dreams and did things in production and had those kind of accolades, and believed that I can do more than just make music, and I can actually develop and break artists, and actually gave me a platform and an opportunity, like a real fucking opportunity to make a difference. And so he kind of kickstarted off this saga of my career, like how Face and Antonio did in the beginning. I mean, but you gotta think about what's the bad. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd rather have 5% of a bajillion dollars than 100% of nothing. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's kind of the thing. I think a lot of people miss out on understanding what opportunity means. Opportunity doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, it's going to lead to that you're going to be the one to get the accolade for it. You might have to, give somebody else a chance to shine, and it'll come back to you. I just believe whatever you put out is going to come back. So, trying to be the star of the show or somebody else's show is just never going to work out. You really just got to know where you get in and fit in. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. You just it's trial and error, man. And just knowing, like, can I add to this? Rather than trying to touch something for a check or touch something just to be involved, can I constructively add to this? Or can my boy add to it? Or can this other producer add to it? Or what's the best play? You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it's not about you. It's not about you being hands-on. It might be somebody else's thing. Or hey, I don't know what to do. Let me go ask somebody else. I think it's just trial and error. But I think it's having self-awareness is how you develop that skill set. Because if you're not self-aware, you'll piss a lot of people off, So yeah. There's always pressure, man. I mean, pressure is a part of life. I feel like, when you're producing, it's probably more pressure coming from that end, because, you're just so in the fucking dark about everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't control anything. You just you go and you show up, you make the music, and you just hope that they do something with it, and that it comes out, and that it just kind of stands the test of time and people fuck with it. I think on this role, there's pressure to break the artist, but you have a little bit more foresight to kind of see the inner workings, what's going on in the back end of things. I think what's the real pressure for me that I think comes on is that it takes a team. You can deliver a hot ass record, but if your marketing ain't in order, if your promo ain't in order, if your PR is not in order, if your videos aren't in order, everything matters. If your digital sales isn't in order, everything matters. So that's the thing that I'm learning as far as leadership skills, and I'm still taking all this in, is just how to get everybody activated. If the artist is driving it, then there's some of their DNA in it, and that it's, if it sticks, it's going to be real. And that's what you want, because these kids can smell bullshit. It's not like when we were kids and, the whole pop scene where, they can package up an artist and give it to you and everybody's like, oh yeah, now it's like, they want to know what's your stance, what's your political stance, who you affiliated with, what you support, what you don't support, what are your values, what is your moral compass, like, it's so personal, that, like, you gotta be real. Whether if that's for better or for worse, you gotta be real, and I feel like the ones that are real are the ones who are motivated and for, self-starters. So I feel like that's what gets me going and gets me hype on it. There's also something to be said about, like, now that everybody can have a voice, and it is personal, it's giving representation to people who never really got that representation before. Whether if it's an artist who's LGBTQ plus, whether if it's an artist who may be of a different religion or a different creed or a different country or whatever. I mean, think about it, man. Like, you have artists that are crossing all these different boundaries, like your Rosalias, who have an amazing following. Yeah. Or even a Drake or whoever, who we probably wouldn't even thought that would have, 20 years ago, like somebody was like, yo, a guy from Canada is going to be the biggest artist in the world. I don't know if that opportunity would have been there if we wouldn't have been able to know him. The parts of the game that get a little bit irritating is like the analytics side, TikTok, and trying to catch what ride that wave, and it's something going viral or whatever, because it can kind of, especially for what we do with urban music and R&B music and rap music, it's such a personal thing that you can't cheapen it to virality. You just can't. Like, Illmatic is a classic album. What the fuck does that album have to do with virality? You know what I'm saying? Like, it would, if it was based on virality, we wouldn't have had Reasonable Doubt. We wouldn't have had Illmatic. We wouldn't have had, Get Rich or Die Trying. We wouldn't have had all, these are real stories and real things that caught on, obviously, but they weren't trying to do a trend. It was just truth. Relationships are everything, man. They are what keep the world going around. It's all about relationships. Bad blood is just kind of bad for business, and it's just bad. It's just bad for your health too. You know what I'm saying? Like, so even with things that didn't necessarily work out, I thought that they were going to work out. You just be cool. There's no need to hold any animosity, because for what? You never know when you're going to have to work with somebody again, and when you're going to have to, re-up on some stuff. So it's better just to throw the olive branch out, and at least, if other people don't want to take it, you did it, and you can sleep at night. If you want to live in chaos, that's on over there. That's on you. But for me, it's like, man, life's too short. When you lose people, I've lost a lot of people in my life. It's just kind of like, what the fuck to fight for, It doesn't really, it's not conducive. It doesn't make any sense. Relationships change and dynamics change, and people grow on and go, and, but nothing that, I'm just a firm believer that, like, man, life is going to keep going. So what the fuck am I going to do? Am I going to sit here and cry about it, or am I going to move on to the next shit? And you just move on to the next thing. You got to be a steamboat. You got to just keep going and keep going and keep riding the wave. There's times from a production career where, you could be on the biggest thing and then have nothing, and then not have nothing in the sense of like monetarily, but have nothing in the sense of where, once that wave is done, everybody's on to something else until you do something cool again, and then everybody's on your shit. And then once you kind of understand that pattern, you understand not to be attached to it. As things progress and things get faster, self-care, making sure I sleep, making sure I eat right, making sure I have somebody tell me, like, yo, you use your meal preps, make sure you eat, make sure you sleep, make sure you do your cardio, make sure you do this, because all that goes into functioning. Like, I understand why athletes spend so much money on their bodies to function, like outside of performance, but just literally functioning. It's a very important thing that I think when you're young, we don't really, you're invincible. You can go to the studio till 7 o'clock in the morning, get 2 hours sleep, wake up, do it again, and then go to school or your day job or whatever the case may be. But as you get older, you really got to be, locked in with self-care, mental health, all that shit. You know what I'm saying? Because you can crack, it can be bad. I'm excited about this new phase of my executive career and all these phenomenal artists I'm working with. I think that's something that I'm really putting my focus in and my energy into. So I love the fact that at this particular state with the label, it's a lot of female artists, and I admire their stories and I admire their experiences, and I think they're so strong and they're so brilliant, and just being able to help them get that voice and that story out, or multiple stories from different walks of life and different cultures and different backgrounds and different things, to help them get that out. It's a beautiful thing to me, and I'm super excited about that, and super excited for what it does, for the world.